Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Dear Masuma, the show that tries to answer your deepest queries and worries. During this holy month of Muharram, we will try and answer as many related questions to Muharram as we can. My name is Sana Araji and we are with the one and only Masuma Jaffar. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, it's nice to have you back to answer some of our questions, especially during this month of Muharram.
Thank you.
So we'll just go straight into the first question of our viewer. Okay, so it says, Dear Masuma, during the month of Muharram and also during Ramadan, Alhamdulillah, my faith is generally improves. However, after Safar has passed, I got back to my old habits and I start doing things that are generally haram. I have a few addictions when it comes to substance abuse, and I really struggle with this. Does this generally affect the rewards of doing good things during certain times? And what can I do to get out of these bad habits?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There are a few things here. I think the first thing I'd like to point out is that they say that they start going back to their bad habits after Safar. So it's not after the 10 days of Muharram, which is quite interesting because that means they're managing to keep away from the bad habits for 40 days at least, which is brilliant because we're told that if you can do something for 40 days, then it becomes a little bit more habitual for you. So it shows that they have it in them. Their heart is soft enough for the love of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to be able to keep away from the sinful acts that they would normally be pulled towards during this time. So I think that's really beautiful. And I think they should be really proud that they're able to do that. And you know, sort of not sort of look at the positives, sort of, you know, credit where it's due. The other thing I'd like to maybe ask them is, when they say that they go back to haram, is it all haram or is it haram because of the addiction that they have? Because that's important. If it's all haram, then the solution would be that they need to understand Allah a little bit better. They need to understand themselves a little bit better. They need to understand the purpose of their creation a little bit better. They need to build their relationship with God. So their aqaid is maybe not so strong. And that's why maybe they're being pulled into all haram. But if the haram is due to their addiction, then the solution would be to work on the addiction, and hopefully once the addiction problem is sorted, then the haram would not be there as, inshallah.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand.
So I think it'd be interesting to actually talk to them and find out, what is the haram? Is it connected to the addiction or is it all haram? Do they get to a stage where it doesn't matter what God says, I'll do whatever I want? Or is it because I'm under the influence of this addiction, then I'm not thinking straight and therefore I'm doing the things that God doesn't want me to do? Yeah,
and obviously because they've been okay during Muharram, maybe they've, like you said, they've showed some positive things, as in they've been able to stay away from certain things. So who would they perhaps go to help with these issues?
So I think if it's to do with addiction, it's something that you actually need professional help with.
Okay.
Because they talk about substance abuse. That's not something you can just sort of wake up one morning and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to stop this. So even something like cigarette smoking, people need help with that. You know, if they've been addicted to nicotine from the cigarette smoking, a lot of people can't do it on their own. They need some sort of help, and you know, you sort of go to the doctor or the pharmacist and so forth. So I think depending on what the substance abuse is, how severe the addiction is, the fact that they're able to come off it for a certain amount of time. I mean, the month of Ramadan is 30 days. Muharram and Safar, if it's the whole 2 months, that's 60 days. If it's not, at least from the 1st of Muharram to Arbaeen, that's sort of 50 days there. So, you know, they're managing to come off it for quite a while. So it shows that they have the strength and the ability and the willpower. Maybe they just need an extra little bit of help to sort of just push them to actually giving it up totally. And if it's done with professional help, then, you know, they'll be guided through it and they'll get that help that they require. And also, I think it's realizing that God sends people to us to help us as well. So it's, you know, you're not any less by asking for help from others, because again, those others are being sent to you by God. So it's important to recognize that.
SubhanAllah. And if they were to kind of have a look at what they were doing differently in those months, maybe could it possibly be social groups, people that they're around? Like maybe during these holy months, they've kind of cut certain people out in their lives.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So it could be, lots of different things.
Yeah, for sure. Because again, obviously the peer pressure and things like that play a huge part in this. And who are you with? It's not something you tend to do on your own. So, who are your friends, and maybe look at changing your friend circle and things like that. And also, what is it that you, like you're saying, what is it that you do differently in these holy months? And maybe a lot of the strength that they're getting is from the connection to Allah through the Ahlul Bayt that they're getting. And then maybe they should be thinking about maybe going to ziyarah and building on that connection, because obviously they're feeling some sort of connection. So maybe sort of using the strength of the Ahlul Bayt to give them the strength to be able to overcome these vices that they have would benefit them. So, looking at going to ziyarah or Umrah or Hajj or something like that would benefit them quite a lot, I would imagine. But I still feel that they would need professional help because of the fact that there is some sort of substance abuse there. I would urge them to get some sort of professional help. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And also maybe talking to close friends and family to sort of let them in on what's happening to them and asking for their help as well. Because again, if you're accountable to others, then it helps, because they sort of pull you up when you're going through the downs. When you feel like you need this, then you've got people you can turn to who will sort of help you and talk you through it and not, sort of help you not go down that path again.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem with that is a lot of people are too afraid to speak to their family or friends. Like maybe they're judgy on them, or perhaps they could be very strict, or they might not tolerate certain things, especially with like maybe mental health issues and things like that. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people in the Islamic community don't take it that serious, or they don't understand it that well.
I think it's from all communities. I think it's something that is now being accepted a little bit more, because it's being talked about a lot more. And that's why I said it should be close friends and family. I wouldn't go around telling everyone,
of course,
because it is very difficult for people not to judge others, and I think people do tend to judge others, and that's a shame, because again, as Muslims, we're told we're supposed to give 70 reasons why a person may do something before we judge them, or before we even think badly of them, or even sort of point a finger towards them, sort of thing. So I think that's a learning for all of us to sort of think about, what is my role in this? Would I, if someone came to me and told me, how would I react? Would I be there to help my brother and sister in Islam, or would I look at it from the perspective of, oh, thank God it's not my family, or it's not my kids, or it's not me, I think it's important to recognise that we do sort of become very self-centred when it comes to problems like this.
Yeah, sure.
So that's really important. The other thing that I think he or she's mentioned is that that the rewards of doing good things during certain times, is there any rewards of that? And I think, of course, doing any good, there is always rewards in it. If nothing but to sort of help you get closer to Allah. It's at least when you're doing the good, you're not doing the bad. So that's really important. I think one of the things that is constantly mentioned to people who, for example, drink alcohol, is that for 40 days your salah, your ibadah is not accepted.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times. Yeah.
There are lots of hadiths that do talk about that, and the marja have talked about the fact that if a person has drunk alcohol or something like that, then yes, for 40 days their ibadah is not accepted, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't pray and fast and so forth. They still have to, because if they didn't, then that would be considered as a sin, and they don't have to pay it back. So it's not that you have to pay it back, it's just it's not accepted. Now, the question would arise, what does it mean that it's not accepted? Because if I don't have to pay it back, then I've done my duty and therefore I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think it's looking at it, okay, let's look at it from the perspective of salah. Okay, we all pray our salah. If our salah was accepted the way it should be accepted, then I would be someone who does not commit any sins at all.
Okay.
Because Allah says that the salah is there to keep away evil and indecency from me. The fact that I'm going towards any sin at all means that my salah has not been accepted fully, because by acceptance I mean it's not had the effect that it should have done on my soul, and therefore I'm still committing the sins.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so it's important to recognize that the things that are wajib that we're told to do, the purpose behind them is that if they have an effect on our soul. And what it does is it moves away veils between us and Allah. And therefore then I'm not pulled towards disobeying Allah, because I can see, I get more ma'rifah of Him.
Right, okay.
And I get that connection with Him. Yeah, so it's like when the Alima were asked, do you not sin because you cannot sin? Or is it that, you know, that do you stop yourself from sinning? And I think it was the sixth Imam, if I'm not mistaken, Imam Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salam, when he was asked this, he took the man to the back streets of the butchers where there was all these sort of internal organs and intestines and things of the animal. And he said to the man, would you eat this? And the man said, of course I wouldn't. And he said, why? And he said, because this is disgusting. And he says, when we look at sin, that's how we see it. It is so disgusting to us that we wouldn't even think about committing a sin.
SubhanAllah.
Because of their ma'rifah of Allah and their understanding of the reality of this world. So as we do these wajib actions, our understanding of Allah, our ma'rifah of Allah, our connection to Allah increases, and therefore we can see the true reality of these actions to a certain extent, and therefore we wouldn't be pulled into sins and things.
We would try our best to avoid.
We wouldn't feel the need to go towards them, because it would be disgusting to us. Now the problem is, most of us pray because it's a wajibat, and it's sort of, okay, I have to do it, so let me do it. And it becomes a tick box exercise, it becomes ritualistic. And therefore then it doesn't have the effect that it should have on my soul. So although I'm doing the wajibat, and so therefore I will not be committing a sin, it's not actually fully accepted. It's not had the effect that it should have had. Because the concentration's not been there. It's like, you know, we have hadith that says that sometimes, the salah is folded like an old dress or something and then thrown back at the person praying because they've not been concentrating at all in the whole salah.
Right, okay.
Sometimes parts of it are accepted. So it depends on where we have been present with our mind and our hearts in the salah, and that part will be accepted, and that part will have the effect that it's meant to have, and the rest of it won't. Yeah. And this is why Allah then in the Holy Quran says, woe to those who pray, not woe to those who don't pray.
Yeah.
So again, it's very interesting. It's you know, He's not saying woe to those who don't pray, because that's another huge, you know, forget them. We're talking about those who are praying. Woe to them as well, because they're not actually getting what they're supposed to get out of it.
That's a really good way of putting it, actually. Kind of like how you said, in a way, a lot of people are not really fully engaged in their salah if they're tempted to kind of commit sins, really, isn't it? So,
exactly.
And it goes back to
this 40 days of not acceptance. So if you've drunk alcohol, then you're not going to, your soul will have been affected, your mind will have been affected. It will be very difficult for you to be present with your mind and your heart in order to actually concentrate in the salah. And the effect of the alcohol, we're told, is going to be 40 days. So for those 40 days, the acceptance and the effect that the salah should have had on your soul will not be there, but at least you're not committing a disobedience by not praying. So it's important that you do pray.
Okay.
And maybe, you know, and also I suppose here I would mention the whole concept of tawbah, as mentioned by Imam Ali alayhi salam, where he says that, we should taste the hardship of disobedience as we tasted the delights of the sin that we committed. So maybe we need to do extra ibadah to actually show that we're sorry and to actually counteract the negativity of the sin that we've committed.
Right, okay.
So I think all of these things need to, because I've heard lots of people say to me, okay, if it's not going to be accepted for 40 days, what's the point of me praying? Or if I have to give its qaza back, if I have to pay back its qaza, then I might as well not bother praying anyway. But you've not understood what the hadith is actually talking about, and you don't have to pay its qaza because you've done the wajibat, but you need to understand that because of the act of taking in alcohol into your system, you've actually put a huge barrier in front of your soul between you and Allah, and that's why then the acceptance isn't there. That's why the understanding of the ma'rifah of Allah doesn't increase through that salah. So
is that just with alcohol, or is that with also cannabis, also prescribed drugs by the doctor that they don't intoxicate you, but you know when they kind of make you feel a bit dazed and everything. So does that?
I don't think the prescribed drugs would come into it for sure, because that's you're doing out of mortaj, out of necessity,
right,
rather than out of sort of desire and lust.
But medical, for example, with I know a lot of people, from reading, that take medical marijuana for extreme pain and things like that, and also cancer as well. I know a lot of people.
So again, if it's something that has been prescribed by the professionals because there is nothing else that can help, then I don't think it falls into the same category.
Right. Okay.
But if it's something that has not been prescribed, which you've chosen to do yourself,
like recreational,
or even for pain, but you've not actually gone to a professional, and maybe there may have been something else that you could have taken, but you've chosen to do this,
right? Okay.
And justified it to yourself. I don't know then if it would hold the same value, sort of thing, because once a professional tells you that there is really nothing else, and the pain is so intense that you need to take this, then there's a different.
It's different, yeah.
But the Marja actually specifically talk about alcohol, and that's because the hadith at that time, obviously the drugs and things were not around then, it was alcohol.
It was, yeah.
And that's why the hadiths talk about alcohol. But usually it's intoxicants. So I suppose the drugs and things would fall into that as well. But I would say to actually contact your Marja and see what he says about it. But my emphasis is that you need to do the wajib actions that are there.
Okay.
Yes, you don't have to give it qaza, but know that by this act that you did, by drinking alcohol or taking whatever it was, that it will affect your connection to Allah, and therefore it will not have this, the wajibat will not have the same effect that it should have done. And therefore then I would encourage for you to do extra in order to counteract the negativity of the sin that you've committed. So whenever we do any disobedience, if we're truly sorry for it, then I think our actions should show it. So for example, it's like, you know, when we've had a disagreement with our spouses and we apologise, then we'll try to be extra nice to show that we're really, really sorry. And it's the same sort of principle. If I truly am sorry, then I will want to do extra stuff to show that I'm truly, truly sorry. So at that moment, I think whenever we've committed to disobedience towards Allah, not only do we have to right the wrong, but I would encourage for us to do extra ibadah in order to sort of actually show how sorry I am for disobeying him.
Yeah.
And again, he doesn't get anything out of it, but it's me sort of trying to counteract the negativity of the effect of the sin of the disobedience.
Yeah, it's kind of like outweighing the bad sins. You want to increase your good ones. But the thing about the 40-day, I didn't know that. I thought a lot of people kind of had that understanding where if they were intoxicated, then they wouldn't actually pray for 40 days.
Yeah, no, that's totally wrong.
So I didn't even know that, and I know of people who would just not pray for 40 days if they had been intoxicated.
Because you think logically that doesn't make sense, because that's when you would need the connection with Allah most. And that's the sad part. I think if again, it goes back to our understanding of Allah and our aqaid. If it's not strong, then whenever we find ourselves in problems in our lives, the first thing to go would be the salah, because we feel so hard done by Allah, because we haven't understood Allah. And therefore we sort of think, okay, you know what, I'm not going to pray, as if we're doing him a favor by praying. And the sad thing is that's when we need the salah the most, and that's when we give it up. So it's really important that not only do I understand Allah to the best of my ability, but I have a relationship with him, and I ensure that my children do as well, so that whenever they find themselves in tough times, or whenever I find myself in a tough time, I'm pushing to increase my relationship rather than break my relationship because I'm angry at God.
Yeah, I think it's something that is so difficult to do and maintain, isn't it? You really have to kind of push yourself and get that connection.
No, for sure. But if you have that relationship from the beginning, where you know that what, he loves me. He loves me 70 times more than my mum. He's created me. He didn't have to create me. The creator of the whole universe chose to create little me. Why? It's like, how special I am that he's taken, time out to create me. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact that he wants me to fulfill my potential and my perfection and go into paradise, that's what he's created me for. And he never turns away from me. He's constantly, sort of pulling me towards him, even when I'm actually being really big-headed and sort of, showing him I don't care and, not bothering with him. He doesn't turn away from me. And if I understand all of that, then even during the hard times, then that's what I'll hold on to. The problem is we try to teach ourselves or teach our children when they're going through the hard times. At that time, they're not listening. At that time, they're too emotional to take it in. It's like talking and explaining death to someone who's lost a loved one. The explanation should have been done before. The understanding of death should have been done before.
It's like preparing before you actually go through the ordeal or any sort of problems.
Because when we're emotional, we don't listen. It's like when we're having discussions. It's like when you're emotional, you're not listening to the other person's point of view at all.
No, because your emotions take over and it's kind of uncontrollable, isn't it, at times?
You're thinking from a different part of your brain.
Yeah.
And therefore you're not logically thinking it through.
SubhanAllah. And I guess like it all goes back to, like you said, from the very beginning, as a parent, instilling that in your child from the very beginning of when, you know, so that they take that on with them as they grow up and perhaps not even feel that they need to make or wouldn't even go towards a sin like this because...
I mean, the reason why you're pulled into something like this is because you feel like something's missing in your life.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
If you have God in your life, then you will never feel like that. So even if you don't have friends, even if you don't, you know, if your family is taken away, whatever life throws at you, if you have a constant in your life, which is God, which will never change, He'll never let you down, He'll never abandon you, then you don't feel the need to turn to anything or anyone else. So yeah, but as parents we can only do that if we truly believe it ourselves. I think most of us don't, and we know it, but I don't know if we truly believe it. It's that concept of yaqeen, you know, having that true faith in God. Most of us say we do, but I think we need to reflect on whether we truly do. No,
it's true, and I guess it's something that we have to try to build gradually. And like you said, it's always easier from a younger age. It's kind of like when they say when you're younger you can learn multiple languages, and then when you grow older it's more difficult for you to understand. It's kind of the same thing with your religion. I think once you pass a certain age, I think it's more of a struggle to get into that routine and momentum of understanding, maybe.
It may be a little bit more difficult, but I don't think it's ever a lost cause. I've heard of older people sort of, I'm too old to learn now. Well, if that was the case, then I'm sorry, but you'd be dead, because God only keeps you alive as long as there is opportunity for you to grow. If there's no opportunity for you to grow, then what's the point of you continuing to live? And I know that sounds really harsh, but honestly, the reason for this world is for us to grow, to grow to our potential, to grow towards our perfection, to grow towards Allah. And if we stop doing that, then why would God keep us alive? Because if we're not growing, then we're damaging ourselves.
The purpose, the sense of purpose has gone. And maybe you're growing and progressing a lot slower, but at least there's some sort of progression, isn't there?
Exactly. So it may be slower, it may be more difficult, but it's still there. And again, the more difficult it is, I feel, then the fact that we're making the effort, God sees that, and He looks at, okay, this person's finding it really, really difficult, but they're still trying. So He'll make it easier for us. So it's us making that effort, and I constantly tell my children, the more difficult it is, the more reward there is, the more growth there is in it. So you know what, when it's difficult, say Alhamdulillah and do it. Because if it was easy, then there really probably wouldn't be much growth in it.
It's all about the resilience as well. So, but thank you so much, Masuma. Inshallah, our viewer has kind of benefited from this, and I'm sure there are also other people who've also kind of have the similar situation. So we do keep you in our prayers, and hopefully you've taken on Masuma's advice on board, and do try and seek some advice from a professional as well. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Masuma, again for answering our question. Inshallah, hopefully we'll see you again for another episode of Dear Masuma. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.